Peace, everyone. Hopefully, you all doing well. This is Master Menelik back again with another sketching session. This is session number 37, and I was kind of surprised at the number. I didn't realize this has been going on for so long. But yeah, we're going through the art elements, and we're on number 6, almost done. We got a few more to go. Maybe by the end of the month we'll be done. But well, we'll see. Because I got another project that I'm working on for our annual retreat, and the link to that is going to be in the description. This is our community retreat. I've made mention of it in the past, but I don't think I spoke to it too much. But yeah, it's a community retreat in New Orleans. And you can sign up, you can bring your family, come through. It's a spiritual community, spiritual retreat. You can go to anulifeglobal.org, which again will be in the chat, and you can go on to the frequently asked questions. There was also a Q&A done, this first day, Anu style, as only we do, laughing and joking, and but giving out relevant information, as well as giving out links and email addresses that you can send messages to, or you can go and look up and find out more about how you can sign up, what it's about, get to see how we interact with each other. So all of those links will be in the description. And yeah, so let's get into it. So we're dealing with texture now, right? And this has been a long journey, taking a couple of detours. We've gone through lines, we've gone through shapes, gone through forms, we discussed value. We've discussed a lot of different things in between as well, color. But with texture, you have all of those elements now playing into one another and helping you to define not just three-dimensional space like you have with form, but we also get to define the nuances and qualities of the different objects that may occupy a space, and this has always been one that I think I'm kind of shaky with as well. We getting into the shakier territory. I'm good with drawing lines, I'm good with shapes and colors. When it came to form, I was kind of shaky on it. But when it comes to texture, I am not the greatest, and I try to be, but I'm not the greatest with this one. So this one is going to be fun because I get to explore a little, and hopefully you enjoy going along for the ride with me. So what is texture? Texture is, if you look in the dictionary, it will tell you that texture is feel, appearance, or consistency of a surface or a structure, right? And for the most part, it's all adjectives, right? So you have something that's smooth, or you have something that's prickly, or something that's rough, or sticky, or bumpy, or hard, or soft, or wrinkly, fuzzy. You can go down the list. It's chalky, it's metallic, it's wooden, it's glass, it's watery, smoky. You can go down the list. You also have the root word, right, which I thought was interesting, which is text, right? Texture, you have text. And it deals with a network or a structure. It deals with weaving and to fabricate, or to make something. So you're taking different elements and you're combining them together to make something that's larger. You can find that root word text in a lot of different words. Like you have architect, or you have architect is archi or archon, which is like a chief or a ruler. And then you have tecton, which is a builder. You have context, which is con. Of course, you have con being with, like you have in Spanish. And then you have textere, which is to weave or together. And you also have the textiles, right? Or what you may call the textile industry. Textile is anything related to cloth or a woven fabric. So already we see that we're weaving things together in order to create something. I want to say tactile. It's kind of tactile, technically, right? Because texture can be tactile, meaning you can touch it, you can feel it, and you can start to make some of those descriptions, right? You can touch something and say it feels rough, or it feels sandy, or it feels slippery, or it feels sticky, right? You can touch something and your reaction will be based on how it feels to the touch. But some things you can tell you can tell its nature or its texture just by looking at it, right? So it can be tactile, it can be visual, and this you can also refer to these as we do in art, where it's actual texture or real texture. That's one way of looking at it. And the other way is that it is implied texture. So what's real texture? Well, most of those things that I described, like rough, or something that's smooth, or something that is dry, or something that is brittle, right? That's some real texture. Or you can imply any of those things. You can imply water, or you can imply metal. You can imply roughness, like if you try to make the texture of hair, you can imply something that's fuzzy. Yeah, you can feel a sculpture. You can definitely feel that a sculpture is rough, or it's made out of metal, or it's made out of bronze, or that it's a plaster cast. Sometimes people use that to make plasters of their faces. Or you can create a 2D illusion that basically looks like something that's fashioned out of stone or out of wood. There's other ways of creating texture too. Like you can create something called impasto. Impasto is an art technique that builds upon thick layers of paint. Sometimes people use what's known as a palette knife to do it, and they just scoop up like huge globs of paint, and they of course skillfully apply them to a surface or a canvas, and they build them up in different ways for varying effects, right? And impasto, you already see sounds like pasta, right? Which is one of the roots. Pasta meaning to knead or to paste, or dough. Pasta is made of dough. But you can also add like bumps, you can add ridges, you can attach different pieces of paper or different strips of canvas onto a larger piece of canvas. You can use yarn, you can use cloth, you can use hair, you can use glass, you can use nails. You can really, you're only limited by your own imagination, right? And the law, because sometimes you have this trope of the serial killer who's the artist, and their medium is they use human bodies. I know that sounds like macabre, but you should know me by now, right? Like the movie Seven with Kevin Spacey's character, he considered his murders to be art, right? That's an example. So people, you can use anything. Right? I don't encourage you to use anything. Be clear on that. But literally anything can be used that's fit in the physical space, or it looks like it occupies the physical space. And sometimes even things that may not occupy the physical space. You can think of aliens from Alien versus Predator. Like, what does it feel like to touch one of those? I bet it feels gross. What does it feel like to touch one of those? It looks like a salamander. A salamander covered in Vaseline. So all of these different things can imply texture, and they can be an actual texture that you would use. right? So I'm going to show a couple of images, right? And then we're going to get into some sketching. So of course we have water, right? Something that's very it's something that you can immerse your hand in, right? This is something that you can call a permeable surface. You can put your hand on the top of it, and of course you know it's wet. But you also know that it's a very reflective surface, and it's also a surface that you can pass your hand through. Another surface I wouldn't recommend. Oh, and bonus points for, of course, applying color to the texture as well. You know, so that's a good combination of different art elements, and you have some values there too to define, you know, the shape of the water. And let me know if you can see this image, by the way. So I'll stop sharing. No, I don't have to stop sharing it. Another surface that I wouldn't recommend putting your hand through is fire, right? Fire has its own texture to it. You know that you can pass your hand through it, and you know that it's hot, right? You can look at this and you can imagine something being hot. Okay, you can see. Then you also have something that is metallic, right? You cannot pass your hand through this, and just by looking at it, you can tell, right? There's no light going through it, and it's very reflective. You can also have something that's metallic, but it's rough, right? So this looks like a very smooth sculpture. Looks like someone spent a lot of time polishing the sculpture, and they keep it clean, you know. And then here we go with something that is metallic, but it's also rough, right? You can look at it and feel that if you rub your hand across this thing, it's going to flake. Yeah, right. Spit shot. Exactly. Yeah, so, and you also have things like different types of sculptures. You know, this sculpture was done by an Italian artist. His name is Giovanni Strazza. And this one serves a dual purpose. You can see the texture of Pisa Manaya. You can see the texture of the marble, of course, or the stone. You know it's stone, but he somehow makes the stone look like cloth, right? And all of this is made out of stone. So how can he make something that's made out of stone also look like delicate, transparent cloth? And you're tempted to touch it just to make sure that it's actually stone. And here we have another sculpture. This one is done by a French artist, right? So this is an African woman. It's called Bust of an African Woman. This one is by Charles Henry Joseph Cordier. And again, you can see that this one is not something you can pass your hand through. It has its rough parts and it has its smooth parts, which it allows for some complexity to it. It's really well formed. I really like the sculpture. You also have different schools that may encourage you to, like atelier schools. You see a lot of them often, and they encourage you to just draw or paint, really focusing on the base elements like we're doing here, right? And one of the things that they encourage you to do is drawings of cast, plaster cast, right? So this is a plaster cast of a hand, right? And you can see that it looks like plaster, but it's actually pencil. You see, And this one is done by Emilia Cantor. She's a director of an atelier school in Costa Rica. It's called Atelier de Sol. And again, it looks like stone, even though it's pencil. It looks like stone, and you see all of these different. Even now, you're gonna get tackled by security if you want to touch the art, to feel what you're seeing. Compare and contrast the senses, but you do get tempted. I understand. It is really cool on the radio. Yeah, I understand the sentiment because I went to a museum once in New York, the Met, and I wanted to touch stuff. I wanted to touch the weapons, but I wanted to touch the art too, the sculptures, because you see all of these different techniques. You may see something like an impasto, and you see like different, the different layers to it and levels to it, and especially with impasto, people can use paint, but they can also utilize a different element to make the texture more pronounced, or to add a different quality of texture. Like they may mix sand with their paint, right? I've seen artists do that. They mix paint and sand together, and that helps to add another level of texture to it, which I also think is really cool. So that's those are some textured pieces that I thought were really cool. There's more to it as well, but those are some that really stood out to me. Right? So let's get to our drawing surface, and there's some more that I wanted to show you here too. I didn't get to add everything to the box, so I'm gonna add some to this canvas here. So bear with me. That is one. So these textures that I'm adding, they're textures that show up on the human figure itself. And the thing about textures is they're heavily dependent on your ability to spot and convey plane changes. That's super important. Your ability to convey a plane change. Get rid of some of these layers. So you have the texture of skin. You have the texture of hair. Right? And hair has different textures, of course. You sisters would know better than I do, whether you have the 4C or whatever. I can't remember the different textures of hair. And there's one more. I don't think this one made it backstage as well. This one didn't. Okay. So we have all of these different textures, right? You can see the texture of the foliage, and of course, put a one in the chat, but you can't see. I think security always tells you I'm standing too close. Oh, okay. Yeah, they'd be ready to tackle you. And you're not allowed to take pictures, which sucks, unless you do the double team. One of you asks them about a piece, and the next one just takes a bunch of pictures when they're not looking. Not that I've done that before, but let's see. Yeah, so you have all of you see all this texture that the photographer was able to capture on the leaf itself. Think about the etymology of that word texture. You can see all of the weaving of different fibers that come together to create something. But the weaving isn't always seamless. So the gaps between that weaving, that's what generates the texture that we can feel. Even if we're just looking at something like the reflective surface of water, your mind already tells you what's going to happen if you touch it, just by looking at it. But it also works the other way around too, where you may see someone who is visually impaired or who may be blind, and in order to quote unquote see things, they touch them. They may touch your face, run the fingers across your face to get a good idea of what you look like, or they may touch the surface of something and be able to tell what's going on. Their whole system of reading, Braille, it's based on touching the surface of letters and relying on those bumps to inform them of that's funny, security. Inform them of what's going on with the surface of this thing or what they're looking at. Right? So let's get to the skin. So you can obviously see that there are bumps and texture on the skin, and you don't have to draw it. You don't have to paint it. You don't have to depict it. But it can inform you. It can inform you or give you a lot of information about what it is you're doing, or at least the surface texture of the aspect of the face or the part of the face that you're drawing. You can look at teeth and see that they look like porcelain. They look very smooth and reflective. And of course, they're always wet because they're inside of the mouth. You can look at lips and you can see all of those plane changes and decide whether or not you want to try to recreate every single fold and every single wrinkle, or if you just want to imply that it has folds and wrinkles by giving a few different textures, a few different plane changes and obscuring the rest. Same goes for the bumpiness of the skin, or the reflectiveness of it. You don't have to draw every pore, but including certain pores or certain bumps, they give you a little bit more information if you're looking at it from the perspective of a viewer. This is, of course, another example of the face around the mouth, and I focus on the lips because you see so much different plane changes that it lets you know that the lips are a different sort of texture than the rest of the skin. But you can also see that there's hair, there's certain things that you just don't include, but understanding the surface of the skin gives you the leeway to break rules once you understand them. And of course, we have my nemesis, which is hair. Especially when you're dealing with melanated hair. Oh, you put a bit of color back here. Here it is. Always go for this one on my background. I always like this one. And I always typically go with gray. Just do something back there. But yeah, you can see the different textures, styles, and different coarseness levels and different types of hairs depending on ethnicity. On the left, you see lots of long, wavy strands, and you can really tell the texture of the hair by the way that light interacts with it. Or the way that light bounces off of it. So here we go into value again, right? Value and shape. Value, shape, and form. They help you to determine what kind of texture the hair is. Of course, you'll need color. Of course, you'll need line. But those three primarily are going to help you to break down this mess because you don't want to draw each strand, which we're tempted to do when we're children. We try to draw each strand because the hair is a bunch of strands. Hair, you see hair is more coiled up. And again, it's very difficult to just try to draw every single piece of white there. It may be easier with some of these brushes that are on these programs, these computer programs. But it's difficult for me. It's always been difficult for me. All right. Whoops. Didn't mean to do that. Yeah. And then we have, I wanted to try and include the 4 elements. So I showed you earth, right? I showed you wood with trees. I've shown you metal, showed you fire, water, and of course we have air. And you can't really see air, but you're seeing all of the different ash particles that are moving. And that's forming this big cloud of smoke. But you can also see, of course, the strands of hair in the beard. You can see the texture of the skin. You can see even the texture of the shirt. You might even see a little bit of goosebumps on his neck. Right? All of these things inform texture. And again, you can take your own leeway and do your own thing with it. And we're going to get into exploring some more paint techniques, right, that show texture. And I may have to show some videos because I still haven't, all this time, I still haven't replaced my tripod. So I'll get that replaced soon, though. I'm going to look into doing that soon. But yeah, willfully you're all following along so far. Why Nemesis? I'm not sure. Oh, you must be talking about hair. Yeah, I was saying hair is my nemesis because I'm tempted to try to draw it in a realistic way, and then I quit halfway, and I'm like, man, after this, I'm not spending all the time doing it. I've gotten a lot better at hair through doing it, but it does get irritating sometimes. Right, so I'm going to take a stab at doing 2 quick sketches, one of each of these sisters, and I'm only really focused on the hair per se, so I'm not going to focus on the rest of them. I'm gonna draw a quick sketch of the rest of them, just so I don't get lazy with that part. But I'm going to go through and try to focus primarily on the hair. And the next time around, we'll deal with more tactile things like wood or metal or even water, right? So I think I'm making good time. It's half an hour for that explanation. Willfully, that wasn't too lengthy, and you actually learned something. I wasn't telling you some boring stuff. But I thought the pictures looked really great. So I'm going to, because I'm biased to drawing stuff on the right, because I'm right-handed, I'll start with the image on the left, right? So I'm going to remove this one here, and I'll just do a very quick sketch of the one on the left. Do I need to reduce this a little bit? Silence is formed. Okay, so I'll do a quick luminance head, and I'll get right into it. Grab a skin tone. This one should work. Once this is side view. Looking up. I think that little bit of a hiatus last draw. I didn't go live last draw. I think I'm kind of dull or rusty with this thing again. This R tablet. Okay, so I got the general shape of a cranium. The face is actually going this way. Of course, this is the line for the hairline. The brow ridge. The nose. Eyes. This is supposed to be the nose. Draw chin a little farther down. Right. Of course, this is a very rough sketch. Bottom of the lip, middle of the lip, top of the lip, nose. Eye. Should probably soften this a lot more. Soften it. Make it bigger. Okay, so that's the face. This is her hairline. Make this a little sharper, little sharper. So this is her hairline here. And you want to draw the shape of the hair as opposed to a bunch of different lines. So I'm just going to use couple of straight lines to outline her face, her hair, and then drop straight down almost. And it comes around this way on this part. This part here, it just falls straight down. Falls near her eyes. Goes like so. I'm gonna remove some of these lines just so it doesn't get confusing. Actually, let me remove them now. So when it comes to hair, I'm trying to catch the general shape and the flow of it because there's so much going on. I don't want to get overwhelmed by information. I think her head is thrown back just a little too much, Maybe. Yeah, I think it is. Now notice the reason why general shapes are so important is look at the width of this versus the width over here. The sail is much smaller. Right. That's fine. Also sketching and drawing is just making little adjustments as you notice you make mistakes. So this hair does wrap around. Good, so what I'm going to do now is separate this with the two-tone approach. I'll make this whole thing dark, and then I'll come back and add the highlights. And for the record, I could have started it out like this as well. I could have just started with a very dark blob and just went in with the lights. But I wanted to do something that helped me to familiarize myself with exactly what it was that I was working with. There's the flow of the subject. Probably use a smaller size. Increase the flow. Make sure I get the right color. Not focusing on mid-tones or anything. I just want to get the general shape of the light and the dark. When you're dealing with textures, layers are your best friend. You know, you have to work in stages and layers. Of course, we could go to lighter colors. You can see a general pattern being formed here. So you can see light, and then it goes into a dark space, and then it comes back to light. Right? So you want to imagine an up and down sort of motion, or to and fro sort of motion. So now if I switch to this color now, if I just go over the highest points or the peaks, then you can see how that starts to look like here, right? And same here. If I imagine that the light is coming from this side over here, if everything towards the light is bright, and it's not uniform strokes, everything is a little varied. But the important part is the parts that face the light are light, and the parts that face away from the light just don't get light, you know. so they're in the shadow aspect. And that's what we're trying to do with this here. We're trying to make sure that everything facing the light gets light and it's not cheated out of light by us rushing. So I'll go back to the previous color I had, which was this very light grayish tone. And because I can, I gotta move that. Let's see. Okay, so because we understand that the light source is coming from, let's say it's coming from the top. So it's coming from up here. Since the light source is coming from up here, it's going to be shining. I remember we talked about diffuse light. So there are certain aspects that aren't in direct sunlight that are still going to get some light because it's bouncing around. But for the most part, the parts that are in shadow are the parts that we're going to see as kind of blackish color. Even though her hair it has like a purplish hue to it. I'm just drawing the shapes that stand out the most that are in this value range. Because her hair is pretty wild right now, it's not straight down. And you can also see it taking the shape of her shoulder. Right, so because it's forming over her shoulder, you can see where it gets lighter. Because it's exposed, it gets a chance to be exposed to a bit more sunlight. Some of these pink marks. thing is I want to get these. I'll get this black out of the way too, just so it's easier to see, to tell these two values apart. And the value I'm talking about is per shirt. So let's say it's shaped like that. And of course, I know it's not completely black. All right. I just wanted to put that there so I can have a clear distinction between where her hair is and where everything else goes. And I only want to do this in 3 stages because I don't want to spend too much time on a single thing. What's left for me to do now is Okay, so as you can see, it's coming out uh, a little better. This is why this is my nemesis because I always want to move on to the next thing. Yeah, but it's just a matter of mapping out those different areas um, and seeing what makes sense, right? And the more details you add, you get to go back and fix and adjust different things, and that'll inform exactly what it is you need to be doing. So I'm gonna play with this lighter value just a little bit, and then I'm basically gonna close this one down and move on to the next one. Because these are both things I need to work on, but what I need to work on also is not being stuck on one thing for too long. I think that's where my anxiety comes from when it comes to moving on to the next thing. I don't want to get stuck on trying to perfect something for too long. So that's where that is. That's where that is. This comes much higher. Okay. Okay, so what I just marked off there was basically this part here comes around the eyes. These dark spots come from underneath because there's shadow there being cast by this lock of hair. Another thing too is you want to keep a continuous flow. I'm just pointing out things as I'm doing it. So as I'm making mistakes, whoever the heck is watching this, you can sort of fix yours. Hopefully I make better mistakes. Yeah, but I think I might have a repeat of the Asaro head incident, where the first one wasn't all too good. The second one I did was much better. the part where I usually get frustrated and start going wild. Talking shit. This is shit. Okay, so I think we get in the picture with this one. I'm not going to torture myself anymore with it, but you can see that the hair has value, it has shape, it has volume, and it has a flow to it, right? And like we had outlined before, you know, there's a texture to it. Move this up away. And as long as you can flow the texture to it, then you should be good. Of course, with the darker bars. highlight part. The highlights. Of course, execution is much more different than what I just did there. But I think you get the concept of it. I'm sorry, that was just bothering me. So I'm just going to fix that. And we gonna move on. All right. So I'm going to hide this layer. I'm going to make it more. Like that. Bring this one back on in. I'm going to try. Do my best. Speed is one of our. We're already an hour in. Oh, peace, Sissy Alfred. Oh, give thanks, Sissy. Yeah, looking a little rough on my end. Good. Alright, so I'll do the same thing. I'll use a sketch to sketch. I tried my circle. Tried my best. Alright, so Sim said Ray, this one is a 3/4 view. What was that? And she's looking slightly downwards this way. Can't see her eyes, but this would be her brow ridge. Be the bottom of her nose. This would be her eyes. And about this distance would be sort of her chin. The mouth would be around here, ish. Shape like so. So we got a skull comes around. That's the face down there. Shoulders. Yeah, wear on hands. Yeah, so I don't have to do that. Oh, actually, this might help. lot of zoomed up. That's better. Stop here. I don't want to load. I don't want to shoulders or anything like that. Just want the hair. All right, enough of that. Getting carried away. So the hair covers most of her face, stops around here also. What was that? And again, I'm just roughly drawing her hair because there's no way I'm going to be focusing on all of that glory. Yeah. Make this a little bit more contrasting. Let's see what I'm gonna have to do here. All right, that's a little better. Okay, so this is the tricky part, right? And to make it a little bit simpler, because afros are super scary to draw. It's just one basically head of broccoli, and you have to distinguish light from dark in a way that's not lazy, but also not super complicated. So usually I take the two-tone approach. But it also feels very difficult to separate light from dark. I don't know if I'll finish this one in this session. Choose a lighter color to that. And let's just say this is where it gets tricky. So what can I do here? Because there are different application techniques. So if I had a brush, a paintbrush, I could take the lighter color, which would, in this case would be like a grayish, almost close to white, and I would just dab my brush on, right? And just keep tapping it. And by tapping it, I get the spaces in between the highlights, but I also get a good dispersion of the highlight. You know, and it kind of works here if I keep doing it with this stylus that I'm using, but it's not the same as using a brush. You know, so this is where you have to sort of translate certain skills to say, okay, I'm gonna use this particular technique, but I can only use it with that tool. So how do I, oh, look at that, found it out. Yeah, but how do I make this thing work? How do I convey this texture that I'm seeing with my eyes to someone else's eyes? And I gotta use my hands to do it. And this seems to be working rather nicely. Yeah, look at that. The only difference is you see the dispersion is much different. So I'll erase all of that. And I'll try something a little different, but I'm onto something. Definitely onto something. Oh, I went about as far as it could go. So what can I do? And this isn't something that is, how can I put it? This isn't something that's abnormal in terms of looking around and saying, okay, what can I use? It's almost like sound design, you know, like those pictures with a guy sitting on a bucket somewhere with a bunch of implements in front of him. And it could be anywhere from a can of tuna with some marbles in it to an afro pick and a saw blade. You know, it could be anything. And he's just making sound effects that you would not know. You wouldn't know what was going on if you just looked. And I mean, if you just listen, you wouldn't realize the things that you're hearing are actually, you know, what that person is using to make it sound. I'm looking to see if I can edit this brush. Nah, I don't think this is allowing me to do that. What does this do? What does this button do? That's not it. What does this button do? Nothing. You know, I can play around with this thing all day though. So let me go back to my. Well, what would this do? Nothing. Nothing. Yeah, that wouldn't do anything. So it seems like the charcoal pencil is what was doing the best job. Oh, that's how you do it. Okay. So this is what I was looking for. You see that spacing up there? I can sort of increase the distance between the pixels. Let's see what this does. Sort of looking like it. Make it just come back behind it with the dark. And of course, in places where there's more highlights, there's going to be a higher concentration of these dots. Huh. Not really down there. Make this one smaller. Yep, that seems like it. Oh, cool. This is actually a lot easier than the other one now. Which is the cool part of texture. Once you find the right tool and application, everything else is just elbow grease. Okay, so I think I'm a little bit more competent with it. But if I increase the size or the surface area, it's going to increase the distance as well. This is starting to feel like a palette knife. What I like about texture too is, depending on what you're trying to achieve, you don't necessarily need to work as hard, because the application may make things a bit more straightforward. And like if I was using just a regular pencil to do this, it would be different than if I was using a brush, which is different than using a little brush. Okay, so I got the basics, kind of the basic shapes. I stopped looking at accuracy. I just wanted to see how much of this texture I can replicate. So I'll go with black, and I'll edit this brush to where spacing closer. Go with that. And I think you get the picture, but I don't think it's gonna pop. I should do something like this. Make it look a little bit more like an afro, some contrast, right? And of course, you can see with some more work and tedious messing around, I can make it look a lot more like an afro, right? But let me know what the texture looks like to you. It may not look like an afro. It may look like, I don't know, a tree with snow on it. Yeah, I'm not gonna color the skin. You'll get the idea. The whole point is to cover the hair. Let me erase that. A fade. Get rid of all of that. And just focus on the fro. Right. But that's it in terms of texture. We have, let me see if I get, I'll just move this. Merge this down. And I'll move you over here. Yep. All right, so those are like your two examples of hair. It's not the best examples in terms of the amount of time put into them, but you all get the idea, right? It's hair. And there's a lot of different things you can do to make it stand out a lot more. I'll be putting more focus into one piece, but I'm following Chief Yuya's style. If you're not familiar with Chief Yuya, I'll leave a link to his most recent podcast in the description. But he has a really good teaching style of starting with the basics and like teaching in layers, So I'm really, like he often says, when in doubt, copy a teacher. So I'm really looking at his style, looking to his style for cues to how to explore these concepts in depth. He usually starts with something that's very concrete. He starts with definitions and then delves into like different applications, which we can cover the next time we do it. But yeah, that's been the sketching session for tonight for this draw. Willfully, you guys, enjoyed it, and it may have been educational, and you learned some stuff. I definitely learned some stuff. But that is it for me, and I'm getting closer to that hour and a half mark because I don't want to keep everybody up with this thing. But I thank you all for riding with me, and that's it. Peace and enjoy your evening.